Welcome to Black Health Now with Doc and Dean. Tonight, we're going to be talking about ways stress can impact your body. We're going to give you an Omicron update, what you need to know with the new boosters coming out. We're also going to be talking about new cancer statistics and the impact it has on Black folks. And finally, we're going to be talking about ways that you can advocate for yourself at the doctor's office. All that and more here on Black Health Now.
Black Health Now, your weekly check-in on how your family can get and stay healthy. Joined by experts from around the world, here are Dr. Mike Lenore and Ellis Dean.
Thank you for joining us, and we are here, and we're having a wonderful, wonderful evening. So tonight, we have a big program, so we're going to get right into it. But there's a couple things I need for you to do for me first. And number one, that is let us know where you're watching from. Drop that in the comment section and let us know where you're watching from. Number two, if you know somebody that needs this information, great health-related information, please tag them and share this on your page. And then finally, if you have any questions, drop that in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking. But you didn't come here just to see me. We're going to bring in the man with the plan and the man of the hour. This is Dr. Michael Lenore, former NMA president, as well as my co-host here on Black Health Now. Good evening, Dr. Lenore. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well. I'm sitting here in Hawaii, but I wanted people to understand how important I thought it was for them to get some news. But I'm in very good spirits tonight. I think that we've got a good lineup for you. I think people should stay tuned for all of the segments because each one, if they don't involve you or impact you, they probably impact your family. I think our first segment is going to be on stress and ways in which you can tell you're stressed. And for that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Dean.
It's kind of funny. And stress is a some people call it the silent killer, because what happens is it starts to pile up and we start having physical ailments, and we don't realize we don't tie it back to stress. And so we got 5 things that can happen when you are stressed and that can impact your body. So we're going to talk about those things. And then if you're experiencing any of these symptoms, they could be attached to stress. So the first thing that can happen is you may lose your hair. Now, if you're watching Doc and I right now, you might say that both of us are stressed, but the reality is that women and men can experience hair loss as a result of stress. And there's multiple ways that can happen, but you may start losing hairs. But if you start noticing you have clumps of hair coming out when you're combing your hair or washing your hair, you might want to check your stress levels. Number 2, and this is something I'm also maybe dealing with, you may gain a gut. Because what happens is when we're stressed, that there's a hormone called cortisol, and it starts to build in your body, and that causes our appetite to go up. We start stressing out, we start stress eating, and then that might start adding more weight to our body. So if you find yourself gaining weight, especially in that midsection area, that might be a result of stress. Another way that stress can impact the body is you might get acne, right? So if you notice especially if you're an adult and you haven't been dealing with acne since you were a teenager, and all of a sudden you start noticing your skin's getting oily, you're starting to have some acne pop up, that could be a result of stress because that oil is starting to build up and all those hormones start kicking back into the body. So just understand, and you're going to get body acne as well. So it's not just on the face, there's acne across the body as well. Also, you may lose your vision, right? And so this is something that's a little bit more serious. It can take more time. That adrenaline, when you have stress, your adrenaline level can come up. It can cause some of the vessels and the nerves in the eye to constrict a little bit. And over time, that can have a long-term impact. And so you may lose your vision. And then the final thing, I didn't put it on screen. I forgot to put it in there. But it is, you may lose muscle tone. So as we start getting stressed, you get this hormonal imbalance. Again, that cortisol level starts peaking back in. We start becoming more sedentary because stress can impact our moods. We don't exercise as much, and therefore we start losing that muscle tone. So those are 5 significant ways that stress can impact the body. And that if any of these things are starting to happen to you, one, go get yourself checked out and start having a real conversation with your primary care provider, or make an appointment with a counselor to talk about reducing those stress levels. And there's foods that are associated with that as well that can help you lower your stress level. But look at lowering that stress level so you don't have these kind of negative impacts on your body. Doc, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think too often people have problems related to stress that they attribute to other things. Or, as you described, they have other things that they fail to attribute to stress.
Right.
I think these are a bit more subtle, but I think these are real. And I think if you've got a problem and you don't know exactly, it's a physical problem, you don't know exactly why it is. I think too often I see patients who look for everything but stress, even when it's right in front of them. So by pointing out these subtle things that people can have, obviously we know there are other things that can happen. But looking at all five, man, I should be in some form of therapy. What's my angry? Got a little gut, my muscle tone is kind of gone. I got some bumps, but I don't think they're acne. So consequently, I better start to regrow and start to think about what I might do to reduce my stress level. But I'm not being facetious, but I am saying that too often we see people who have symptoms that are related to stress, and too often we see people who will ignore stress as an obvious symptom.
Absolutely. And if I could add a sixth one, loss of sleep, right? If you're finding yourself waking up during the night, restless, your mind's not calming down, you're thinking about what you have to do the next day, whatever, that's a sign of stress. And we know how important sleep is to our overall health and wellness routine, that we need to get a good night's sleep. And so if you're having some stress, that could impact your sleep, and then that's going to have other health impacts. So please, I know we're joking, but being serious. If you're having these symptoms or other ones, please, don't rule out stress as a potential starter. So moving on to our next topic, Omicron is still out there. We've got the new boosters that have been approved by the FDA, some new Omicron specific boosters. So Doc, what do we need to know in order to stay safe? I know people think COVID is over, but it's still out there.
It's still out there. It's still killing 400 or 500 people a week. So it's clearly not gone. I think people are obviously a little frustrated having to continue to get injections. But when I have a issue of this complexity, I try to turn to the most experienced expert that I know to explain it. And so I'm turning this over to Dr. Ken Rhodes to talk about the new vaccine.
The different variants of COVID arise from mistakes that the virus makes when it's reproducing itself. And when the virus makes mistakes, sometimes those mistakes make the virus, not very effective. And other mistakes make the virus actually stronger or better able to infect people or to escape from our immune responses. And so what has happened in this recent round of developing subvariants of Omicron. So these are on the Omicron family tree branches, but they are like cousins of Omicron. They look similar, but they look a little different. They're part of the family, but that they're not immediately related. They're not like brothers and sisters. They're like cousins, if you will. The problem with those variants is that they look to your body's immune system like something that it does not necessarily recognize, because we have trained it, and especially with these mRNA vaccines, we have trained the body very specifically to be looking for something that looks like Delta. Omicron has about 50 mutations, so it looks very, very different from Delta. So because BA.4 and BA.5 have been so dominant recently, they represent between 80 and 90% of the virus that is infecting people now. We now have a booster that will help your body make antibodies and have an immune response specifically against BA.4 and BA.5. So it's really important to get boosted, because we know that immunity goes down over a period of about 4 months. But now it's really important to get boosted with the BA.5 or BA.4 specific booster. The reason is, number one, you can't get the monovalent, the old one. You can't get the old booster anymore. But the second reason is, of course, because our bodies now need training to be able to find and identify this latest subvariant of Omicron. If you haven't had a primary series, then you won't be eligible to get this booster. This new booster is only for people who have had a primary series. So, and for those who are 12 years old and up, it is not available for the younger kids at this point. And if you have had your primary series and then an additional booster, then 2 months from then is when you can have this new bivalent BA.4, BA.5 Omicron specific booster.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good explanation of what we need to know about this booster. Here again, I think it's important that, you probably have to go through the process, in order to be able to eligible for the booster. And the further and further along we go, I think the more difficult it's going to be. I think the mentality that says I'm not going to get vaccinated, I think is we need to accept that that's people's philosophy. I don't criticize it. I don't really. We do try to explain it, but I don't really try to change. But I read an article today, Mr. Dean, that last year 1 million people died from drug-resistant bacteria. There was no drug that could help it. So we know that over the next several years, we're going to find more and more sophisticated bugs. But this was a good explanation. I think that those of you who are considering the booster should read about it. The side effects should be similar from similar vaccines. But it really is a very important piece of the struggle against this virus. And it looks like we're going to have to do this the same way we do with flu. Like every year, you're going to have, some kind of a shot, or maybe by year, we don't know yet. This is a very dangerous virus for what we don't know about.
Yeah, I think some key points that I want to reiterate for the people that are watching that she made was, number one, if you haven't had your first series, you can't get this booster, right? And this booster is specific for the dominant variants that are out right now. So you need to get that first series taken care of if you haven't, if you're trying to get this booster. You just can't walk in fresh off the street and get this booster. You have to have that first series. Number two is it's for people 12 and up. So when you have younger children, I think it's important, if you have children that are under the age of 12, to get boosted, because that'll protect them. If they're living in your home, or if you have access, if you're around kids that are under the age of 12 that can't get boosted, you should protect yourself so you don't pass something on to them that they can't get protection for. So that was another key component that I heard. And I think ultimately, you're right, Doc. We're at this state now where COVID is going to be here. It's going to be just like the flu. And just like the flu kills up to 50,000 people every single year. And it's been around for over 100 years. And so Black Americans are lagging in getting their flu shot. And I'd say, look, when you go get that booster shot, go ahead and get your flu shot while you're in there too,
Yeah, I got my shot at Costco, and it didn't cost me anything, but I left with about $500 worth of groceries. But now I think most of the pharmacies have it available. Here again, we've been through the thing about hesitancy and all of that. I don't think we want to rehash that. It's for me, from what I read and from what I experience, I thought it was a good idea to get that shot.
So, Doc, I got a quick question. Moving on to our next story that I found to be very, very interesting. When you mentioned this, we talked about this before, and we were talking about it. There are some new statistics on Blacks and cancer.
Well, the American Cancer Society about a month ago released statistics on the impact of cancer on African Americans.
Okay.
And there's some good news, but no cause for celebration. There are some good things about where we are stacking up in terms of prostate cancer, less deaths, maybe not as lethal for us, but in almost every other cancer category, we are behind in terms of morbidity and mortality. breast, pancreatic, leukemia, other things. There have been a lot of postulates about this, and always people want to point to genetics, but there's really no evidence that African Americans are more prone to cancer than other people. And if we tie it to genetics, what that means is there's no cure for genetics.
Right.
So why do anything about it? I think there have been a lot of explanations, but I think the most rational explanation and the most comprehensive discussion, Dr. Kim Rhodes. And so we're going to see what she thinks about these new statistics.
Sexy to try to find a genetic reason, but I also think that plays into the overarching narrative, which is, oh, there's just something wrong with Black people. And if we can find it in their genes, then actually we don't need to do anything about it, because you can't really change anyone's genes. So I'm more inclined, because those kinds of operations tend to reside in neighborhoods where there are high densities of African American people. I'm more interested in the DNA changes in the tumor rather than the person, as a function of where people are living and what they're exposed to based on what is around them. So the next thing that I go to is what happens to and for Black people in the places where they get care when they present, for example, with an early stage cancer. Because when we look in California specifically, and this may actually be reflected in the national data as well, partly because California contributes so much to the national data. But when you compare an African-American woman and a white woman, or an African-American man and a white man presenting with the same stage of disease, so it's not more advanced, you will still find a persistence of a gap in terms of survival, that the white patients tend to do better. This is not physiological, that it's the same stage of disease. I've actually written papers where we modeled and compared. We said, okay, not only is it the same stage of disease, we're going to match these two people on everything besides race, including whether or not they have high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and other things that can contribute to a poor outcome in cancer. And what we still find is that race looks like it's correlated with a worse outcome. So then you ask, well, what could be going on there? So the way I see it, the questions that I have asked, the papers that I have actually published in pancreas cancer, stomach cancer, colorectal cancer, acute myelogenous leukemia, is we're asking questions about where do people get their care. And we're also asking the question, if where you get your care determines what you get, and if what you get is appropriate to exactly the stage, to exactly the genetic makeup of your tumor, targeted therapy, if you get those things or not, those things appear to be correlated with survival. And in California, in the diseases that I just laid out, where we have published papers on this, what we have found is that Black people tend to cluster in the types of hospitals that may not have the high-end equipment, the precision medicine, the ability to do genetic testing on your tumor to see if there is a targeted therapy. So people get generic therapy. And if there is that kind of differentiation where there's an opportunity and a potential to have a good outcome, if you get the right coordinated precision medicine based care, what we see is that the outcomes are better.
Interesting. I always thought that, I just assumed that when people take on the responsibility for caring for cancer patients, they have access to all the stuff that you need to deal with it. But she's looked at this in the most scientific way and has come up with this conclusion that I think really requires the attention of the whole Black community. That and certainly for the individual, if you've got a cancer problem, you really need to be at a place that's known for dealing with that particular cancer. And if that place is not available to you, you need to ask somebody. And so consequently, I think her analysis is not unique, but it surprised me a little bit that I thought almost all cancer treatment centers were equal, but apparently that's not the case. And so I think we need to start working on trying to make her work a little bit more visible, because I think we have some of the power to change some of the dynamics around cancer care. And when we talk about breast cancer, especially pancreatic cancer, these are cancers that in which they're making great strides. We want to make sure that they're available to Black people. And so, I always get a little sensitive when you start talking about doctors. So I'm going to turn this last segment over to you. I'm going to sit here and take it, and for my colleagues, and maybe I have a bit of response or an explanation.
Well, I think this next segment is really appropriate after we just talked about cancer, right? And
Right.
knowing there's unequal treatment from different cancer centers, and we know as Black people, we know we tend to get the lesser of the treatment. So what we're talking about with this next segment, we're going to talk about 9 ways to advocate for yourself when you go to the doctor, right? So if you want to get the best treatment, if you want to get the best medication, the best kind of treatment, you have to advocate for yourself. And so here's some great ways that you can do, great things that you can do in order to improve your outcomes when you go to the doctor. So number 1 is do your research, right? So if you're having a condition, if you can go to blackdoctor.org and search on a symptom, right? If you're feeling a certain kind of way, if you feel like you might have something, go to our site, right? Start on our site, go to the site and do some research before you go into your doctor. Write down some questions, say, doc, I was experiencing this, I learned this, help me understand, and then work through that with your doctor. Number 2, set and prioritize your goals, right? What are you trying to accomplish, right? Are you just going for your well visit? Are you there to alleviate pain? And okay, if you're there to alleviate some pain, set a time limit. Okay, I'd like to have this pain gone, and work with your doctor in 3 months. Doc, how do I get this pain to go away in 3 weeks, 3 months? Whatever your goals are, set that goal and then reevaluate that relationship. Number 3, bring a friend or a family member, because you might be getting cancer results back. You may have gone for a biopsy. Having a second set of eyes and ears in there, 1, holds the doctor more accountable. And number 2, it gives they can replay what they heard from the doctor. So you can make sure that what you both heard was in alignment, so that now your treatment plan, you're going to be more adherent to your treatment plan, because now you've got an accountability partner to make sure that you're doing what you need to do. Number 4, make some lists, right? When the doctor gives you lists of things, he might say, well, you can do this, do that, do this or that. That's a list. Write those things down. Make a list. Make a list of your symptoms. If you've got some symptoms coming in to the doctor that you want to talk to them about, make that list. Okay, doc, I'm doing this. I'm not sleeping well. I'm sneezing. I'm finding this. Even if you feel like it's the most minute symptom, write it down and let the doctor to help you determine whether or not it is significant or not. Number 5, and this is really important, remind your doctor that you're a team. Your doctor's there as a practice to give you some advice, but you're a team and you're the driver of your health visit. And so you got to make sure that you are driving that car and you're saying, doc, we are a team. I'm on the treatment side. I need to make sure I'm following through, but I need to get the best information from you. And I also need to get the best medications and treatment plans from you. So therefore, I have a better chance of alleviating whatever I'm here to see you about. Number 6, take notes and record your visit. And this is that other thing. If you don't have that buddy or that family member that can come in, take some notes. Most phones have a recording device. Just record it. Say, doc, is it okay if I record this so I can play this back later? So I can make sure that I didn't miss anything, because I might forget. I'm getting older. I'm forgetting some things. I might have missed something as far as our conversation. Do you mind if I record it? Do you mind if I take some notes? Most doctors are not going to object to that. Matter of fact, they may welcome it. And if they don't, that's not your doctor, right? You can always go find a doctor that's going to be accepting of that, because remember, this is your health that you're dealing with, and you need to make sure you're doing what you need to do to keep it going. Number 7, don't soldier through discomfort. This is maybe for the man, right? Like me. Like I got shoulder pain right now. And I'm like, and my wife asked me, have you gone and go get it checked out? I'm like, nah, little Advil, and I'll check it in a couple of days. Don't do that, right? I need to call orthopedic to make sure that my shoulder is working properly, right? Because we want to make you have the healthiest years, especially as we get older. We cannot let things linger because that could be symptomatic of something that's larger that you have to deal with. And the more you wait, the more you procrastinate, the harder it's going to get to treat it. Number 8, ask questions, right? And this seems like it's very simple, but a lot of times when we go to the doctor, we're mute. We wait for the doctor to ask us questions. We answer as to the best of our ability, or don't answer at all, or answer with those one word, it's fine, I'm good, I don't know, it hurts, yes. No, the more information that you can get from the doctor, the better chance you're going to have to be adherent with the treatment plan. And the more you're sending the message to your doctor that you care, and then he or she is going to give you more information because they realize that you're involved and invested in your health. And finally, push back when needed, right? And so it's not an argument, right? So don't let Dr. Google give you some information that you think you're going to run in there and do a gotcha moment with your doctor. But if there's something that if your doctor is dismissive of whatever your pain, if you're experiencing pain, and this is specifically for Black women, because Black women routinely get their pain discounted and they don't get the right medication. Or like, for example, it takes up to 6 years for a Black woman to be diagnosed with lupus because it's a painful condition and their pain gets discounted. And so they don't even go through the test for them potentially having lupus. So if you have to push back, even if you need to go get a second opinion, if you need to go get another doctor, do that. Because again, this is your health and it should be the most important thing in your life. So those are 9 ways that you can advocate for yourself. There's more. You can find more on the African American Wellness Project website, as well as blackdoctor.org, to get this information.
Well, I think that I have nothing I can say. I mean, everything that you suggested actually helps me as a physician.
Mm-hmm.
If you come with that attitude, you may not find that with every physician, especially if you're African American, and they have sometimes a sense that we shouldn't do the same things that their other more sophisticated patients do. Well, we need to do more, because if you look at our outcomes and if you listen to the previous study, then I think you're going to see that all of these things are necessary. We have a specialist in that area that Doc and Dean depend upon. That's Dr. Glenda Newell-Harris. Yes. She wrote the book, Focus on Your Best Health. And if you really want a Bible for how to deal with the healthcare system, we're going to bring her back on our show as soon as it's practical. But those 9 tips will live somewhere around Doc and Dean. We just haven't figured out where yet, but we're new in this game. And so, obviously our time goes by so quickly. And we want to thank Dr. Kim Rhodes for all the help she's given us and information.
Absolutely.
But we also like to thank you for joining us, because we're right now probably the only contemporary Black health news show on the air. I mean, certainly online. And you can help make us better by both, sending us information, sending us messages. You can make us better. And you can tell your friends about what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep you up on all the latest information that has to do with Black health, because your health is your wealth, and information is a tool by which you can do a lot of the things to overcome some of the barriers that we see in the healthcare system. What say you about that, Mr. Dean?
I say you're right on the money. I think one of the things is that I got this from one of our previous hosts, and she would always talk about, we're trying to increase your health span, and your health span is a number of healthy years that you have in your lifespan. And so the more information, the more empowered you are as a patient to talk to your doctor, have those questions, and make sure you're following through with all of the treatment plans that they put in place, the better the chance you have to have a healthier health span in your life. And so it's very important that we maintain our health first, because we can't do anything else without our health.
All right, so stay with us, and remember, as we always say, health is your biggest asset, so protect it.